Hello everybody, Mr. Polley here. So today we're going to look at another non-fiction book. Now if you remember, a non-fiction book is usually an information book, and it means that the things in it are not made up, so it is non-fiction. So let's have a look, shall we? I think I picked quite an interesting one this time too. So this one is called Adventures in Wild Places, and it's written by Marilyn Woolley. So let's have a look, shall we? Now, first thing, this book is really long. So we're actually going to use the list of chapters here on the contents page and just pick a couple that we think are interesting. Now, I think we can read Wild Places, which is an introduction. I don't think we'll get very far in the book if we don't know what it's all about. And then let's pick, I'm a little bit torn actually, because I think a few of these look really interesting. So let's read about chapter 3 and let's read about caving, page 12. So let's try to remember that. But if we can't, we can always come back to the contents afterwards. So here's the introduction first. Wild places. Imagine climbing to the top of the highest mountain or diving into dark underwater caves. Imagine walking across frozen land marked by dangerous crevices in a screaming blizzard, or trekking across hot deserts where water and shade are scarce. These are wild places where no one lives because the environment is harsh and it is difficult to survive. But some people like to go to these wild places for an adventure. These adventurers want to test themselves against the elements and hazards in ways that other people find hard to understand. The weather in wild places can be severe, and the conditions very dangerous. People who seek adventures in these harsh environments often have to travel great distances and spend a lot of money on equipment. They also undergo strict training and fitness programs. They do this to give themselves the best chance of surviving, in case they become sick or suffer life-threatening injuries. Wild places are often remote, and medical help is far away. This book describes the experiences of some adventurers in wild places. It also examines the dangers of some of these places and looks at what adventurers do to stay safe. Okay, so I remember we are going to look at the chapter on caving. So, remembered, page 12 is chapter 3. So, caving. A cave is a hole in a rock face that is large enough for people to enter. A cave system can have more than one entrance and may have many tunnels and chambers. Some caves can fill up with water. Let's go backwards since we finished this paragraph and have a look at this word. A chamber is a room. It's another word for a room. It usually refers to a large room, a very large room. And we don't usually use it for the rooms in our house. We would use it for the rooms in a mansion, or maybe a church or a cathedral would have chambers in it. Or here, a cave, right? Cavers are people who enjoy exploring caves. Not only do cavers walk long distances when exploring a cave system, but they often have to climb down dark holes and crawl through narrow, slippery tunnels. Often these caves are in remote areas. So let's look at the pictures on this page briefly. So here we can see a lady here, and she has a flashlight on her head. And down here, we've got another picture here of a cave. Let's read about it, shall we? The Mammoth Cave National Park in the United States is the longest cave system in the world, with more than 540 kilometers of tunnels. It was listed as a World Heritage Site in 1981 and is home to 12 types of bats. So that's quite interesting. I think we saw this in a previous book. A World Heritage Site is a site that is protected by governments and scientists because it has something particularly interesting or unique about it. So in this one, I'm not sure, but I suspect that the reason it's a World Heritage Site is because of all the different kinds of bats that probably don't live anywhere else. So let's read this page, shall we? The hazards. of caves. Hazards means the dangers. Caves can be dangerous places. They can be wet and cold, and cavers can suffer from hypothermia, where the body temperature drops severely. Because caves are dark, people can slip over or fall down holes. Falling rocks can also hurt them. So here we have the word hypothermia, which is highlighted here. Hypothermia is where our body temperature drops and it starts to injure us from it being so cold. And it can cause things like your fingers to drop off, or your heart rate to stop, or your blood not being able to go around fast enough. It's pretty bad. So remember that when you're spelling hypothermia, it's with an O, okay? It's not hyper, it's hypo, okay? Because hypothermia is literally the opposite. So it's with an O. Let's read the next paragraph. In some caves, foul air, sometimes called bad air, can make people sick because not enough oxygen can get into the cave. It can cause headaches, dizziness, and fatigue. Oxygen. I'm sure you've learned that from science. O2, the stuff we breathe and we need. Fatigue just means extreme tiredness. Another hazard of caving is cave fever. As cavers move about, soil is stirred up and breathed in. Some cave soil can carry a fungus that causes cave fever. This starts as a lung disease, but may spread to other parts of the body and can end in death. Wow. Can you imagine getting fungus, like tiny, tiny mushrooms inside your lungs? So this is quite interesting. Look, over here we have a list of the various types of caves. So this is a glacial cave, an ice cave formed in or under a glacier. A glacier is a huge, huge block of ice that travels around very, very slowly. Now, these are very important environmental features that are disappearing as the Earth gets hotter. Limestone cave, a cave where the old remains of sea animals have hardened into rock. Oh, wow. Look at this, look. You can see all of these stalagmites coming down from the ceiling. We'll check that later because I find it hard to remember which one is which. Sea cave, a cave found in the sea cliffs, formed by waves crashing against the rock over a long time. Wet cave, a cave that has a lake or stream deep enough to swim or wade through. Stay safe while caving. Cavers should wear protective clothing and shoes, which may include knee and elbow pads, depending on the height and narrowness of the cave. Just like divers, cavers always go exploring in pairs or teams, so there is someone to help in case a caver is injured. They should also leave an itinerary with someone, so if they get lost, they can be rescued. An itinerary is the list of places and times that you're going somewhere on, like a trip or an expedition. So here, for example, you would write down, on Monday, 10 a.m., we're going to go into the Mammoth Cave, National Park Cave, and we expect to come out at 3 p.m. And that way, say it gets to the next day, and one of your family members or your friends are like, oh, I wonder where they've gone, they can look at the itinerary and find out. And that means if you do go missing or get injured, then it'll be easier for rescue people to find you. So it's a good idea to keep an itinerary for that reason. Even if you're just going on a normal trip, you never know when you're going to get into trouble. Okay, let's have a look at the next page. Water-filled caves and their dangers. Divers use scuba equipment to explore caves filled with water. These caves sometimes have rare plants and animals. Cave diving has all the hazards of deep-sea diving, as well as the hazards of caving. Strong water currents can pull the diver in another direction, and parts of the cave walls may crumble easily. Divers can find it very hard to see if sand becomes stirred up in the water. Caves have ceilings, and so divers must swim back to the entrance before rising to the water's surface. This can make things difficult if a cave diver needs to surface quickly in an emergency. So this is quite interesting up here. I'm sure you've seen this word before. Scuba divers. So it's SCUBA, and this acronym, which is letters that stand for something, when we say this, we actually read it out. Now, I don't know what scuba stands for, actually, so I'll tell you what, let's make a note of that as well. Let's see if we can remember what stalactites and stalagmites are, and let's look at scuba, what it stands for as well. So let's remember that for after we finish reading. How cave divers keep safe. Like most adventure sports, cave divers operate in pairs or groups in case something goes wrong. They have a dive plan that includes how deep they will dive, how long the dive will last, and any emergency procedures that they may need to apply. Divers attach a long rope near the cave entrance, which is then carried on the dive through the cave. This way, the group can keep track of where they've been and no one gets lost. In order to see in the dark, divers use a helmet with a light attached to it and carry spare batteries and bulbs. Oh, I see. So when they go through the cave, they just leave this trail of rope behind them, just like Hansel and Gretel with their breadcrumbs from that classic fairy tale, right? So here are some accounts of people's cave diving experiences. So let's read this first. A cave diving experience. Andrew and Jane have been cave diving in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. They each have their own point of view about diving in caves. So here's Andrew's point of view. I love diving in caves. It's like being in another world. Every cave is full of water and totally dark. All you can see is a small area lit up by a torch. It's a real adventure floating through the different caves, seeing new things all the time. I love the dark shadowy shapes that form along the cave walls. They look like strange moonscapes. Oh, thanks, Andrew. And here's Jane. When you dive in caves, you're not only underground, you're also completely underwater. Everything is close to you, and you have to move very slowly so you don't disturb the dirt. It's totally silent, except for the sound of your own breathing through the scuba tanks. I tried caving a few times with Andrew, but I didn't like the feeling so closed in. I prefer sunny open spaces like the beach. Sounds like she's a bit claustrophobic, doesn't it? Which means fear of small spaces. I hope you enjoyed the accent. Hi guys. So I hope you enjoyed the reading, and I think before we sign off, let's have a quick look up what our questions, let's answer our questions. So you guys remember, previously we came across two things that I wasn't sure about, and we can use Google to find out the answer to our questions. So let's do that now, shall we? So if we come over here, we can see I've got Google open. Now when we're searching for things on Google, we should definitely have our mum and dad with us to supervise, and we should make sure safe search is turned on as well. Okay, so let's search for stalagmite, stalactite diagram. Now, actually, I spelt them wrong. That's really interesting. So if you have a look up here, it's stalactite, but it's stalagmite. Interesting. So if you remember inside the book, there was a big, like, spiky thing climbing from the ceiling, and I wasn't sure which one was a stalactite and which one was a stalagmite. Okay, so a stalactite comes from the top, and a stalagmite comes from the bottom, and if they're joined together it's called a column. So yeah, I guess this is just a thing that we need to remember, right? The other question was, what does scuba stand for? Now sometimes we can just type the question, what does scuba stand? There we are. What does scuba stand for? Self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. Now I feel like I knew that at some point but forgot. Okay, so let's have a look at the words in this. Okay, so here we are. Now there's a dictionary definition down here as well. Sometimes the first result will give you the exact answer you need, but often it's a good idea, if it doesn't quite answer, is you can open up the page, or you can check down here or scroll down a bit. But this looks like it gives us all the answer. An apparatus utilizing a portable supply of compressed gas. Okay, so that's the breathing part, right? We need to breathe the air. And then self-contained means it doesn't need to connect up to the outside, because actually old diving equipment you would have a tube that ran up from on your diving suit, and it would go all the way up to the boat. And sometimes you'd have a guy at the top pumping the air in, actually. So let's have one more piece of research here. There we are, let's search for diving suit old. So here we are, we've got some cool pictures of it down here. They look a bit creepy, actually, I think. So here's one here. There's an old black and white picture. So here you can see there's this pipe here, or tube, and that would go up and people would pump the air in, so you've got enough stuff to breathe. Because obviously we have to breathe a lot of air, right? And the air in a scuba tank is compressed, it's squished down so that it all fits in there. You fit about 20 minutes of air into a normal scuba gas tank. This one, you just have to keep pumping it all the time, so it's quite hard work. And also, you can see in that previous picture, it looks a little bit heavy to move around in it, doesn't it? So look here, you can see he's wearing lead boots, so that he can walk across the bottom of the water. Wow, it's a different world now, isn't it? Well, I hope that was as interesting to you as it was to me anyway. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed our non-fiction book this week, and I'll see you next week. Bye guys.